I still remember. Do I still got it? Can the ninja still do it?
I think you can. These
All right.
talents don't go away.
All right. I'll take your word for it. Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas Show, Oyster Ninja, and we're back. I'm here today with Miss Virginia, the Lady Oyster. What's going on, Virginia? How are you?
Oh, I'm doing so well. It has all the leaves are turning in Maine right now. It is a beautiful time of year, and we are just coming off a really awesome summer season. So I'm just so happy to be here with you, Gardner, and see your face again and catch up.
I know, right? Um, so you've actually been on the podcast before. I had to go re-listen to that a couple days ago, and I was like, dang, this was a pretty good episode. We talked about, of course, all your projects that you had going on then. I think we were still in COVID at that time. We were talking about social media. We were talking about, of course, the projects you were doing, spotlighting people in the industry. We got to know you a little bit. But for the new listeners, because believe it or not, I haven't been putting episodes out, but people are still listening to this podcast. So thank you guys for that. Um, but who is Virginia?
Hmm.
Gonna put you
Let's
on the
see.
couch.
Yeah. Let's see. Who am I? Well, I am a lover of oysters, number one. Um, Adventurous, curious person, but someone who has, grown up on the East Coast. I was born in Maryland, have a lot of fond memories around that area, and have been climbing up the coastline, I think, ever since. So I'm now based in Maine. And this year I launched a tastings and tour business. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about that. But for the last 8 years or so, I've been writing about oysters and the people in oysters. It's just been a fascinating industry to me and a place where I found a lot of great community. So, so really, that's where this all began. Was just in pursuit of a hobby that ended up snowballing into something so much more and so much greater. Yeah.
Love that. Now, trick question here. Who is the Lady Oyster?
Well, for a long time, it's funny you position it that way because I felt like, in a way, I was living a double life. I was working in corporate sales for a large travel company for a decade, and when I started writing about oysters, I was still really in the thick of that. So for about 5 years, between kind of juggling a very action-packed job where I was traveling every single week for sales. I was in between putting on boots and trying to get on mud flats and meet people and see a life that was very kind of different from my own at the time. So Lady Oyster is really that side, this creative, really passionate side about the environment, about people who work on the water, and about just fostering that level of community and lifestyle that we all love and want to preserve. So that's, I guess, Lady Oyster is a lot of things, I think, over the years, but it's
Yeah,
finally landed here in Maine, which is nice.
nice. So, that's very complex also. I mean, I think I also suffer, not suffer, but kind of suffer from Gardner, Oyster Ninja, SS shucking, whatever. Like it's so many levels. It's like when do you turn on and when do you turn off and how do you bridge those gaps and all of that is it's weird. But I just used the word. I'm not supposed to say weird because like everybody's saying weird.
Weird is cool now. So,
Right. um so it fits. But yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. So what was the I guess what was the pivotal moment? It was like, you know what? I want to go to Maine and I want to start educating people and just jump in here with this oyster community and culture and do some things and stir some things up.
yeah. Well, geez, living in Boston, I came to Maine a lot over the last 6 or 7 years. Met people, built a lot of great friendships, and decided that I really felt like I had a home here. Um, About a year and a half ago, I actually quit my corporate job to finish a writing project that I was working on. And I have an agent and we're pitching a book. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens with that. But at the same time, it was a moment for me to just kind of reconsider where I was with my career and if it was making me really happy. And basically, I just said I didn't want to go back. I wanted to create something that was kind of my own. And there was no doubt in my mind that Maine had to be the place to do that, simply because of the support and the love and the just the community that created for me over the years. So when we moved to Maine, I had this idea in my mind. I said, we've got the most diverse region for oyster farms in the country. We have over 150 oyster farms here in Maine. And we have an incredible amount of knowledge, coastline, a geographic advantage when it comes to tourism. Like, how can I position myself in between the producer and the raw bar to really deliver a story, things that I've been sort of collecting for so long? So that's kind of really the questions I asked myself when I started this. And then this tasting business was born. So that's kind of I guess, the way around how this all kind of started.
Yeah. What were some of I mean, I know you spoke about the support you have, which is great. Who doesn't want support, especially starting something new, branching out on new grounds. So I'm glad to hear you had some support. But what were kind of like the obstacles starting this out?
Yeah. Well, for a moment, it did look like I just moved to Maine and launched a business, and there were a lot of people in the business community like, "Whoa, who are you?" So I think I kind of had to explain that I kind of have been here for a while, sleeping on couches for a really long time, um, documenting these stories. And it was nice to sort of finally integrate from a business point of view as opposed to just a storytelling point of view. Um, I think it was really challenging for me to do that mentally. And this was probably all in my own head, but to have delivered content for so long, really for free. I wasn't working for really any major brand partnerships. I was just using this as a platform and a hobby, to then switching and asking people to buy from me. It was very hard. And I didn't know how I should really navigate and communicate that with people. But after a while, I just kind of got over my own self and decided that I really had a lot to offer, and it was okay to ask people to come visit me in Maine and see me for this kind of experience.
Yeah, because I remember during the last episode that we did together, you were talking about how you were doing this, thing kind of as a passion project, and you actually didn't want people to give you money because you didn't want that to skew the way you told your story, which I thought was like, wow, that's awesome. So for you to pivot now, and not really pivot, but just kind of, I guess you're still telling your story the way you want it to be told, but now you're just saying, "Hey, I need my money for it." And it's at it. I'm giving you something that I think that you'll value, and this is the price for it.
Yeah, I think it's more that I finally took a lot of years of background in what I did for work, which was marketing and sales, what I had learned about oysters, and I kind of asked myself, where could I fit in this industry? Where could I actually belong that provided value to everyone while I was still promoting farms? I was still telling their stories. I was still so much a part of their advocate plan. Um, but I could do it in a way that people wanted to come visit me and learn from me too. So it was a really wonderful way to kind of, tourism was that perfect way for me to position myself as kind of an ambassador for this region. And while making a living out of it, absolutely.
So before we actually get into the tastings and the tourism thing that you're doing, I want to hear your opinion when somebody comes to your experience. What should they leave with,
Yeah,
or what's the
that's
goal?
such a great question.
Take your
You
time.
know,
Take your time.
I have sort of decided that this business is really about gastronomy, and that's so different from just food tourism. You can come to Portland, Maine, and you know do a cocktail tour, or you can do a pizza tour, right? But is that really a sense of place? Is that really what Maine is all about? And so when I launched this business, I was like, I want to do something with food and oysters that preserves the heritage and culture and lifestyle here in Maine, that really promotes that and shares it with people in a way that they haven't experienced before. And I do that in kind of creative ways too. I want them to come and feel loved and cared for, and just that intimacy and attention that people deserve in a culinary experience. And so I coupled that with a lot of knowledge, um, to give them something that they can't get at the raw bar necessarily, just because story sometimes gets lost with volume, and that's okay. And then something that, is a sensory experience where they walk away and go, oh my gosh, I have a new appreciation for oysters. I have a new appreciation for Maine. And I'm hoping that people feel rejuvenated when they walk away, cared for and loved. They've had an experience in Maine that deepens their relationship with this place. So I hope that's what they take away.
That's awesome. So we've kind of bounced around, the experience. So could you tell the all listening audience what you actually offer?
Yeah. Yeah. So I focus on two types of experiences when it comes to tastings and tours. One is the tasting aspect of the business, which is the sensory side. So we're talking about taste, appreciation, process, nature, how that contributes to oysters, ecology of the region. So our relationship with these waters for thousands of years. Um, and we do that in a really cool way where we're taking them across three different bodies of water in Maine. I choose three different oyster farms from three different regions. So we can really sort of tune in on those microclimates and micro terroirs that we have in Maine. We pair that with some nice wines that are great with shellfish and a sunset. So there's some really great sensory components to all of that. That's one side of the business, which is the tasting, the guided tasting work. The other side is what I call the tactile side of tourism, which is that hands-on experience that some people really gravitate to, which is getting them out on an oyster farm, getting them to actually learn how to cull oysters, how to shuck oysters on a float, how to really engage with this animal in a way that maybe a farm engages with that animal. So we're trying to approach tourism from two different angles, that sensory and that tactile angle. And wherever you fit in that experience, you have an option. So those are the two services that we do offer.
So I want to take it here, and that sounds like an awesome experience. First of all, I love that. I love the idea of it, and well, actually, anything that has to do with oysters and education and a good time, you can pretty much sign me up. Um, but again, referencing the last episode, you talked a little bit about how you don't really like being in front, the star. How did you get over that hurdle?
Oh, I don't know, Gardner. I really don't.
Because for
I
so long you spotlighted other people. It was you telling the short story and sharing the story, but it was like, you're the person behind the pen or pencil keyboard. And now this is you, Virginia. This is you.
Yeah, you know, I think when it comes to, I guess, journalism in a way, if we were to think about it that way, and blogging and journalism, there's, opinions on all of that, which was fine and good. But I think I did try and be removed from that story because I wanted people to really share their passions and emotions with people and just be that platform for that to exist, right? And you do that in a very similar way, Gardner. Um, and I think once I moved into doing guided tasting work, I felt like I could have a more active role in creating that for people and helping them make those connections where I was participating now. I was being able to guide them through that from my point of view, from my learnings. It did take me a lot of time to be able to be comfortable and confident in that role. But in a sense, I'm still storytelling. I'm still just providing them what I know and what I've learned. And every conversation that we have with people is different. Every tasting we have brings out a new side and curiosity in people, which I think is really, really cool. It's not rigid. It's not this, you learn this first and then this second. It's you, we share this and you ask any question you want to, and I'll help you answer it. So I do think I'm still the vessel in a way for these wonderful people on the water.
It sounds very familiar as far as, again, like what I do. I love the familiarity of the questions, but it's so different because everybody has a different upbringing. You can hear 100 stories about somebody's first oyster or first oyster experience, and it's going to be different every time. It's going to be similar maybe with grandparents or aunts and uncles, but it's that story of getting together and trying something new and holding on to that memory and like cherishing it almost because either you're going to fall in love with something or you're going to have a memory just to laugh about. So that's
Yeah.
great. Um, Also in Maine coming up, you guys have a festival coming up, right?
Yes, we do. We just got off the Pemaquid Oyster Festival that was this past weekend,
Mm.
and the other one coming up that's a pretty huge hit is Harvest on the Harbor. So that it is on October 26th, which is a Saturday, and the night before that we have a pretty big shucking competition as part of From the Sea program, which is another culinary event that evening, which should be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next year I'm going to plan better. Next year I'm going to plan better. Maybe I'll start planning now, and I can put stuff on the calendar. I love Maine. I love Maine and I love Canada. I just kind of fell in love. When we went to Glidden Point 2 years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, I could live here. I mean, it's not a lot going on, but it's enough for me, you know?
Yeah, Maine is such a special place. It is so unique. The coastline, we can't really find anything like it anywhere else in the States. And we are so fortunate to have the oyster industry that we do, the support from Maine tourism, the state of Maine, to, there's so many grant opportunities, things that are really supportive of sustainable seafood and that future. So I think Maine, watch this space, right? It's a growing area, and I kind of hope that one day we see Maine as, we talk about it as the Napa Valley of oysters. We say these things that it's similar to the wine regions we love. So let's act like it, let's build out those tasting rooms, build out the sommeliers that are focused on giving that oyster experience and driving all of this attention and energy to Maine as a culinary place to come to. Regardless of how many people you find here, we're all stretched out. We're all on our own coastlines, our own peninsulas, doing some really cool work. And that's what I just love about it.
That's awesome. I know you've pretty much put your anchor down in Maine. Um, but what was the driving point? I know you said support. But let's say why do you think this would work in Maryland or Virginia versus Maine for
Oh,
you?
yeah. Heck, for me, yes, it would
Okay.
work in so many places that have a great oyster industry. I think when you think about the tasting opportunities, and we look at Maine's geography, there's just an advantage to the microclimates we have. This is, we have, because we have over 150 oyster farms in one state, that choice for me in terms of a tasting environment and what I can do with that is so great. Now, there are other regions around the country, the Pacific Northwest, huge opportunity, Chesapeake Bay, huge opportunity. And I think that, Maine came from a place that already had such a great sort of sustainable future ahead of it with oysters, that already had a lot of thinkers working on these kinds of themes around oysters, that it was a good place for me to fit and try and drive this business. But I don't see it ending here. There's so many places around this country that could have their own tasting rooms, their own sommeliers, their own guided work gosh, like the sky's the limit.
Nice. Well, I think we caught up uh, with everything. Is there anything else going on? Oh, well, can you talk about the book, any? I didn't want to bring it up, but can you talk about it, any?
The book,
We don't have
yes.
to. We don't have to. I'm just letting you
No,
know.
it's okay. It's just it was such a labor of love. No matter what happens with this book, finding a publisher, or whether it becomes a digital release, or my own self-published work, I'm so proud of finishing something like that. What it really is it starts when I land on my very first mud flat, when I have that really cathartic oyster experience for the first time, and I start questioning everything. You know, what is it about oysters that's so special? Why are people so passionate in this space? I was just so curious. And so the whole book is a journey of meeting people in the industry who are either so passionate, that are community focused, that have tied their identity to oysters, that have moved the industry in a unique way. And it's me sort of walking through our North American community in oysters, finding these people and learning from them. And eventually it leads to the end of this book where potentially I change my own life too, simply because I've been so influenced by these incredible people. Um, the book has gone through several iterations. It's a narrative nonfiction work, so it does have a bit of me in it. But I hope one day it gets its moment. It would be a wonderful, wonderful moment for this industry. And it's really focused on those human stories versus just, this is the oyster, this is where it's from. So I'm hoping that will resonate with people in the future. And fingers crossed, we'll see how we go.
That's a great answer, first of all. Um, I got a weird question. Dang, I said it again. I said it again.
I love
Um,
weird. I'm weird.
no,
So,
you're not gonna like this, because this is like one of those things you're not supposed to talk about at the table. Um, I want it because it's almost November and that's voting time.
mm-hmm. Yep.
Are we supposed to talk about this on the podcast?
This
What
is
I
your podcast. We can talk about whatever you want.
what I wanted to ask you is, as far as tourism, aquaculture, are any of those factors influencing the way you vote?
Yeah. So, Maine is really, I guess, wonderful place for promoting sustainable aquaculture. So I think as far as the groundwork that's already laid here for this industry is really strong. Of course, I'm going to vote with, the environment in mind, with things that will continue to make this industry prosper. Um, I encourage everybody to decide which candidate will do that for this industry if you're a part of it, and will protect what we have. Um, but it's certainly, politics is just something here in the States that, drives a lot of these outcomes, right? For our people on the water, our coastal communities. And whatever balance we can achieve. I mean, for me, especially as a small business that's just starting out, I'm looking at candidates that are also supporting small businesses as well, and what we can do to get more people, into entrepreneurship that really want to be there. So I'll leave it at that. And I encourage everyone to decide which candidate will really support those goals and dreams for themselves.
We can't throw Virginia off. Virginia is on the ball. Come on, I tried to throw a curveball in there and she knocked it out the park. What the heck? Okay, Virginia, I'm done. I'm done.
Too
Thank you
kind. You're too
so
kind.
much for joining us once again on the Oyster NInja Podcast. I wish you much success with your tourism, oyster and tourism venture. And how can people sign up for your tastings? How often do you have them? Let's give them everything they need to make this one of their next trips.
Yeah. So most of my bookings are on the website. I have a book now button where you can find all of my tasting experiences and the farm cruises as well. The ladyoyster.com. That's where all of that rests. I do have a seasonal business, so that's from the beginning of June to the really the end of October. The rest of the season, the rest of the year, I work in private party capacity and corporate events. So we're doing a lot of cool guided tasting work on the off season. So if you do have a group that you're really keen to come to Maine and enjoy something over the winter when oysters are very sweet and delicious, then that's an option too, and that's under my private events work online. So you can find me in any capacity, and I hope that this just encourages more people to come to Maine and experience oysters at the source, including you, Gardner. Come on, get on up here.